Who's missing? Who's still coming?
So everyone's here.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's Jason. Cool. All right. I'm going to read a chair statement and then we'll begin. Due to Utah County's high level of coronavirus cases as determined by the state's COVID-19 transmission index, I have determined that conducting meetings with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. Therefore, for the next 30 days, all meetings of the Landmarks Commission will be conducted via electronic means. And with that, we will call the meeting of the Landmarks Commission for February 16th, 2022 to order. Let's just do a brief roll call for the commissioners. I'm Matt Christensen, chair and present. Jeff, you're muted, but I know that you said something.
I did. I said Jeff Ringer, commissioner present.
Susan Fales, commissioner.
Jasa Bishop, commissioner present.
Jesse Embry, present in person.
Dustin Wright, staff.
Marvelous. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. Let me just pull up my agenda really quick here. Looks like on the agenda we have one item. Applicant Dan Vowles or Vowles? I don't know how to. I want to make sure I pronounce his name right.
Yeah, Dan Vowles.
Vowles, okay. Requesting a landmark certificate of appropriateness for exterior work at Provo Town Square in the general downtown zone located at 16 West Center, the downtown neighborhood. Dustin, do you want to take us through the staff report?
Yeah, thank you. All right, so yeah, Provo Town Square, we're looking at the properties as part of that, West Center Street and University Avenue on the northwest corner there. So this project that we're looking at, the request is to do repairs on exterior windows along the back side of Provo Town Square buildings, and so the courtyard back there is what we're looking at here. Just kind of give us an idea of what it looks like back there currently. Just kind of go through some of this, and then so basically Provo Town Square, it's multiple buildings that were built at different times, and each building kind of has its own historic character, architecture, and that's same on the back sides of the buildings here. But over time, it was all acquired under one ownership, and so interior connections are kind of connecting all of this space on the inside. But from the exterior, we know that it's individual buildings. So on the back here, we're looking at just different window styles from these different buildings. As you can tell, there's kind of a wide variety of styles, windows along the back. And so as we're looking at this project, that's something I wanted to kind of just highlight there. So some of the windows that we see are going to be part of the historic fabric, the original windows that have been maintained, and then there's going to be other ones that were added on at some point. As you can tell in some of these images, some of those stand out quite easily as ones that don't contribute to that historic fabric. Another point is that a lot of these windows, since we're looking at so many different windows, they're kind of all in different conditions right now. Some that will need a lot more repairs than others. A lot of the repairs that are going to be needed would be from like water damage. And so, down towards the bottom on some of these is where you see more damage. Up on the top there. With the windows, there's going to be better, more intact up in some areas on the windows.
Dustin, what's going on with that that photo on the left there, what are we looking at? I don't,
So that's just looking down at one of the window sills. It's a
oh, okay.
sandstone sill that's kind of eroded over the years, and so that's what that one is.
Okay, got it. I didn't realize we were looking
Yeah, sorry.
in the building. I thought I was trying to, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so the applicant wanted to be able to come to Landmarks Commission and kind of get some perspective and some guidance moving forward. And so we brought it to you to kind of go over this. But as I've kind of shown here, there's multiple buildings that each have their own styles. And each of those is in various conditions as far as how well they've been maintained or not over the years. So it would be helpful for the commission to help direct the applicant. And based on how many windows there are, it'd be one thing if we're looking at one building, but since we're looking at multiple ones, it gets a little more complicated. And they've done a pretty good job of going back in and doing a kind of an analysis on each of those windows, and that's helpful. They've gone back through and looked at some of the plans from the 70s or 80s, 90s, and provided some of that, which I included in the staff report for you to look through. It would probably be helpful to be able to take a look at those plans to kind of see where those snippets fit better. At least that's how I felt kind of going through that. But as far as providing some more clarification and guidance, staff recommends that the Landmarks Commission could provide some guidance as far as what would be helpful to better analyze each of these windows on these different buildings. So part of that would be to have them provide a plan for each building, each individual building, and then indicate, if that's going to be a replacement or a repair on that window. If it's a replacement, then showing what the new replacement would be. In their documents, they provided a proposal for what a window would look like. The questions that I had, and maybe you'll have as well on that, is since we're dealing with individual buildings, would it make more sense to direct them to the windows that aren't historically significant? Would it make more sense to make sure that those windows that are being replaced match the existing windows that are original to that building? And I can jump back here and kind of give an example of what I'm talking about there. So for example, on this building, this window here is obviously a fairly newer addition. Aluminum or metal doesn't match the other windows on there. So this wouldn't be one that we would need to preserve or keep. If they wanted to change it, that would be fine. But should it be a window that matches the other historic windows on that building, or something different? So that's something I think the commission could provide some guidance on that for the applicant to be able to move forward. If there's repairs proposed, it would be helpful to, again, each window is in a different condition, and so some windows need more work than others. So having photos of each of those windows and identifying which portions of the window would need to be repaired, and then providing the methods that would be used to repair those areas that are needed. That's kind of what we're looking at right now, just being able to get more information back so that we'd be able to analyze that and then come forward at a later time and provide a recommendation as far as a certificate of appropriateness for this. So I kind of went through a lot there. If you have specific questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those, or if we want to turn the time over to the applicant to discuss some stuff as well. I think I'm open for whatever the commission would like to do there.
I just have,
Do any of you have questions for Dustin?
I have a comment. Can he hear me?
Yeah.
I wandered through the buildings and looked at the various windows, and in person, it's quite a maze just getting around through all the different buildings, especially on the second floor. So I got a new insight, not by just looking at pictures, but looking at the building.
Anybody else?
I may come back to Dustin, but I actually have questions of the applicant when we're ready to get to that.
All right, Dan, do you want to maybe respond to the staff report and tell us kind of where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to actually turn the time over to Jeff Knight, who you've been working with, Dustin, on this project, who's actually the lead architect on this. So I'm going to turn the time over to Jeff to go ahead and answer any questions and discuss the project.
Yeah, so I appreciate you guys taking the time so we could talk through this. It was a good introduction from Dustin. There's a lot going on this property. We actually used to have, our office was in this building. Actually, where we're sitting here, used to be our office for a couple of years, and then we since moved out, and then this property was bought by new ownership, and it, reinvesting in this location, and so we're involved in a lot of different efforts, both with the landlord, the owner of the building, and several of the tenants, to fix, and improve what's here, and it's fun to be involved with it because we know this building pretty well. We spent a lot of time here, and we've done a lot of digging through drawings. We've spent a lot of time looking at the building to try to understand the various layers of history that are here, right? I mean, there's some of these buildings that are truly original to the turn of the century. Some we've found were added in later, and where there was maybe a driveway at some point, and then there's been fire damage and reconstruction in certain areas. And it's been a bit of an adventure to try to piece together the history. What we're focused on, as Dustin mentioned, is that the interior courtyard part of the exterior of the building and those windows. And as we've tried to peel back, and in our application, we've pulled screenshots and snippets from the plans that we have access to, which I'm sure, yeah, we don't have plans for everything, but what we can tell is that the maze that was brought up here on the second floor, a lot of these corridors were part of additions that were done after these original buildings were built to connect these upper floors of these buildings. It ramps up, it ramps down, it goes in and out of openings and old brick walls. But much of what is in the courtyard area have been additions. Some of it's from the 80s, some of it's from the 70s, and I think we don't have drawings of it, but I think there was, some of it's even from the 60s. So a lot of what's in the courtyard is not the turn of the century, the original part of the buildings and the facades like you see on Center Street and University Avenue. Most of the windows that have the most problems are from an addition that appears to have been built in the 80s. And they were wood windows, not clad windows, and were not maintained. I don't know the full ownership history of this building, but the most recent owner that we paid rent to when we were here was a nice guy, but he did not maintain well many parts of this property. And many of those windows have been neglected to the point where there's just a lot of deep rot in the wood. There's pretty significant damage where the windows have become, you know, beyond repair. And part of what we're trying to do as part of the overall effort to revitalize Provo Town Square, fill the second floor with office tenants and uses again, and have a vibrant retail and restaurant experience on the ground floor, is to kind of tidy up that courtyard area. And there's various ideas being discussed, nothing that's been designed, and we anticipate at some point coming back to the Landmarks Commission to discuss, you know, ideas for that courtyard space. But the first thing that is needed to be done in order to improve the interior office spaces on the second floor is to address these windows. And so what our preference and proposal would be is, because of the various layers of the history, and because we truly have not been able to identify anything on the courtyard side that is actually historic in the nature that it's original to these buildings that are on this block. What we would like to do is propose a really good quality, historic looking new window, but that's consistent along that whole back of these buildings, on these walls that were built to tie together these various buildings, so that from the courtyard you have a good visual, consistent, clean, you know, look that matches the historic character. We don't want to come in. I mean, that the interest in this property and what's trying to be done here is to celebrate the good bones that are here. You know, the historic nature of these buildings, and so we don't want to come in and put in something that's got a contemporary look or a modern look. We want it to maintain that historic and classic look and feel. But we feel like it will be so much better to have, you know, good windows and good repair, and then the cost effectiveness, as we've looked at the various ways that we can deal with the windows, whether it's piecemeal repair or replacement. So far, every cost we've seen has been it's far more cost effective to just replace the windows with something that's, again, that's got the historic look to it, but that's a new window, will give us better, you know, thermal performance as well on our energy, and so we're trying to maximize the efficiency of the investment. You know, invest that way on the windows, and then still be able to invest in several other parts of the building. We're looking at getting masons involved in some of the repair and repointing of the masonry on the exteriors, and there's a lot of projects, right? There's a lot of things we want to do to continue to improve Provo Town Square, and this is one piece of it. And so I've had lots of conversations with Dustin of, you know, repair versus replace, and try to deduce what's historic and what's not, and and again, we just spent a lot of time going through it. So our preference would be to do that, to replace the windows with something that's good and strong. But we wanted to have this conversation with the commission to hear your feedback and answer your questions, to make sure that we're on the same page.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thanks. I don't want to divert us too much because I know we're focusing on the windows right now, but just to give the commission a sense of where this project's heading, it would be really helpful if the applicant team could just talk us through briefly your vision for this project. First of all, I want to congratulate you, because the back sides of these buildings, whether it's west or north, have been so degraded over the years that I do a lot of hosting and bringing people into Provo, and I never really want to take them back there. So I applaud you for addressing that. Thank you. But could you spend just a minute and talk to us about the overall vision for this project? Do you think down the road we're talking about demolition of some of the newer structures, reconstruction? Just talk us through what you hope this project will look like in coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think there's no demolition of buildings being considered,
including any of the 70s or 80s additions on the back of it. You're intending to retain those?
Correct. I think the intention is to use the space that's there, and revitalize the space that's there. But like you said, I mean, the courtyard's kind of this neglected part of the property that we actually see a lot of opportunity there for events and programming, and they're looking at a lot of ways of reactivating some of the basement spaces. There's the underground that was used as a social space for a long time, and so they want to activate that and activate connections to that basement space, and improve kind of the way bring activity from Center Street into the courtyard space and have it activated. We're looking at, there's a big cooling tower back here that half of the building uses that cooling tower for heating and cooling, and we're going down a path where we can convert all the mechanical to new systems so we can remove that cooling tower, which would give us space on that ground floor to do something that actually activates it a little bit better. And what that's going to be, we're still figuring that out, but we see food being served and patio seating and that kind of thing, and kind of a fresh new look at how the landscaping and that whole out and patio space is being used. I don't think we'll be demoing any of the additions, and they're not really talking about adding on either, doing any additions. That we're exploring opportunities for a better elevator access and getting elevator to the basement and some of those types of things that would affect a little bit, that exterior, but it's more about access than it is, expanding any square footage, from that aspect.
Thanks very much. So if I understand you correctly, in terms of building usage, you're looking at retail and restaurant on the street level with offices above. Is that the plan?
Yeah, the focus is all level 2 to be office space. There's some work being done right now, some interior remodeling where they're creating kind of a commons and a shared conference room and amenity lounge for office tenants on the second floor. And then looking to try to get more smaller scale office suites on the second floor for smaller businesses. We're actually one of the businesses that we're probably going to be moving back into the building and utilizing one of those spaces for our office space. And then the ground floor would be centered on, retail and restaurant type of spaces. There's a quiet old space that's been office that faces the courtyard that right now they're talking to a tenant that would have yoga classes and an entrance off of the courtyard. That would then tie in with an entrance in the building. And so we see kind of more of those types of activities and uses on the ground floor. And their food is kind of one of the main things they're looking at right now, and improving food options, especially during lunchtime. And I mean, there's already some great restaurants here. So just kind of building off of that is kind of the focus.
Thank you.
Are you on mute?
Jeff, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, that was helpful. Now let me jump back to Dustin quickly. Dustin, when they're speaking about replacement of windows, especially in the newer editions, so our roughly under 50-year model, does the city have any concern about just straight up replacements on any of those windows? Or are you looking, or would you prefer repair on some of those windows as well?
Yeah, so I think like I was showing in some of the examples, there's windows that we know aren't historic. And so if they wanted to change those, I don't see an issue there. There's windows, so in the staff report, I talked about an addition that was done, and that was on the back of the Avenue block here. So all these windows on this building here are part of an addition. They're not historic. And so having those replaced with something different, I don't see an issue there. I think what what we kind of get into is, so this window is one that was, metal, newer window, but then you've got the kind of older here. So on this building, that's why I think it's important to maybe break it out by building instead of looking at the whole thing as Provo Town Square, looking at them as individual buildings. Because on this one, for example, it would be desired to restore the historic windows on this building, and then maybe the one here that's not part of that or doesn't contribute to that could either be changed to one that fits with these, as opposed to the one that the applicant has described that would fit on all the buildings that they're looking at doing. That way it doesn't stand out as much as it does right now.
So is that an addition that you were just pointing to, or is that part of the original building? It's really hard to see when you're back there.
On this building here,
No, the next building, that building.
so this portion of it, my guess is that what this could have been added or changed or something, I don't know, without getting into plans.
What we've seen in the buildings and in the plans, and then also walking it through here, I think that whole, honestly, I think that wing is an addition. I just don't know exactly when. That big aluminum storefront window was cut in when they cut a hole for, there's a stairwell right there, and they cut that in. Was that in the 90s? 92 plan is when they cut that stair in. Yeah, and then in 79, we can see that there's some of these things here, but inside this building, the whole structural system, and we've actually got the ceilings opened up right now because they're doing the interior demolition right now. There's a whole change in the structure right here where this original building has these large like girder trusses, and then this has a different post and beam system. And so I think this back part of the building was added on as well as this right here to this building here. And so I think this was an addition at some point. And then they came in and did this weird thing on this corner and built that stair, which is really an unfortunate location for the stair to be. But that's where they did it. So we're kind of working within that, but we'd love to, get rid of that nasty aluminum storefront on there. And that's, I guess, the question, right? Is if we repair the existing windows, and these, honestly, they're really, really rough. We repair them and then we put in something new to replace this aluminum, it's still not going to look consistent, right? And so what we would like to do is have them look consistent. She looks like Susan's raising a finger.
Yeah, I had a question. It sounds like what Dustin is proposing is that we go building by building and look individually, and what you're proposing is that you'd like to do across the board a change that would be compatible with the buildings. But do you have, if I'm right about that, do you have an example of what you wanted to replace these windows with?
Yes, I can show an example. We've looked at, there's a couple different options, and to that point, looking from building to building, we've gone through a little bit in our drawings, like where we've identified each window and based on the existing plans when we think those windows were put in. I don't know if can I share my screen?
I pulled up your plans here that you submitted. Is this what you're looking for?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, there's the Pella Reserve. There's another one that our contractors told us we can get more quickly with lead times. That's made by Windsor, but it's the same type of thing. It's kind of their traditional looking double hung window. Most of the windows are a double hung window. And so that's what we would want to replace it with is a double hung and as much the same visual look, as what is there.
Okay, thank you.
But to your point, that is correct. I mean, what we would prefer is just the consistency. We can go through building to building, and they have different sizes, right? You know, that some of them are, the proportions change on the facade. So there will be that variation, because we're clearly not going to change the opening size. We just want to build the same opening with a new window. So I think that'll help still maintain some of that variation from the facades. But that is kind of what we're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, please. When I'm up on the second floor where there's all those offices, where are they on one of those plans that you have there? You understand my question?
Yeah, I think so.
You wander through all, there's all these little offices, and then you have to push a button to go down some stairs.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can. Is it? No, this doesn't have the option where I can draw on the screen. Trying to see how I can point that out for you. There's basically, so if you look at that addition where, and if you look, there's a ground floor space. It's only one story. And there's a green awning right there. Yep. Okay. So if you go back behind on that building where it steps to the second floor. Yep. So those windows, along those windows, there's a corridor.
Right.
Yep. And then right there, yep, exactly where Dustin went through. It does cut through, and then there's some offices. It's single loaded right there where there's offices on the university side. And then as it cuts through the building, there's offices on both the east and the west. And then it comes out and there to the stair where there's that aluminum window on the corner. Yeah, if you come a little bit further left, Dustin, and then there's, yeah, out to there. If you go back to where we were, where those windows with the corridor, yep, and then you take it to the inside corner. I'll keep going to the right, going further to the south, and then the corridor there, it breaks and it turns to go to the elevator, and those windows there are an addition when they built that corridor to connect those buildings, and it goes to a stairway and an elevator that's just to the west there. Yep, right there. So then that kind of massing right there is where there's a stair and there's an elevator in the middle, and that's the main elevator of the building. So everything to the south of that, between that corridor and Center Street, is office space. That corridor does carry through to the east towards University, and then there is a little stair that drops down onto Center Street, kind of by the bell tower where Los Hermanos used to be. And kind of where Dustin has his pointer there, that's the 3-story Excelsior building. That's the only 3-story portion of the property. And there's a stair that comes up from that corridor that goes up onto that 3rd floor. And so there's office on a 2nd and a 3rd floor in that part of the property.
Thank you.
Here in this hallway, I believe right here, you can see that there's exterior windows on this side of it that used to be the windows before this addition here was done.
Yeah.
So in terms of the current project, are we talking about all windows that face onto the courtyard? So the 2nd-story windows on the recessed buildings and on the south-facing buildings, as well as they face out over this flat roof. Are we talking about all of those windows?
Yes.
So Dustin has just looped it in for us, all that whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. That does bring up the one area that I would say, back to your question before, Jeff, about, any remodeling or demo or work on some of the more recent additions. The entrance from the courtyard side that enters to the south, yep, right there, that area will likely be addressed as part of the courtyard redesign. That entrance will be addressed to be, it's got a pretty dated kind of 90s look to it right now, and we want to tie that in. Yep, that right there. We want to dress that up to make it fit the rest of the property much better, and have a stronger presence and relationship with the courtyard. What that's going to look like, we haven't gotten into the design yet of that.
Great, thank you.
That's such a weird looking entrance compared to all the rest of the place.
Totally agree.
Yeah, the back of the Excelsior building that you can see here at some point was stuccoed, but the windows, from what I could tell, most of them I believe would be the original, but they brought the stucco, right up to the wood on those. And so there's some I couldn't get to get a better look at, but so even though the exterior facade has been stucco, those windows are still there.
Jeff, I've just got a comment, I guess, and a question. One is, as you look at like with this 90s or whatever, whenever this Provo Town Square entrance was built, when you're looking at when you decide to fix that up, as well as just kind of the general philosophy of all the windows themselves, is you never, the philosophy in preservation is if you can't preserve it, and you have to build something new or put in something new, you don't want to make it look like it was old. You want people to see and recognize that this is a different, this was built or constructed at a different time as the actual historic building. So as you're looking at it, it ought to be complementary, but it shouldn't look old, if that makes sense. And then I'm also curious about the windows. You've kind of got with Dustin's and the staff report saying, they prefer to have each window in the buildings addressed on a building by building basis because they were constructed at different times, versus kind of what you're hoping, which is just, if I'm understanding correctly, just basically just put essentially the same design of window everywhere, just for cost effectiveness, which I get. Yeah, I think it's, at least for me, hard to kind of imagine what either of them would look like with what you're hoping to do. Is it possible, and obviously this makes it so we go to another meeting, but to get kind of a rendering of what both might look like so we can get an idea of visually what it would look like in the end? Commissioners, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense.
That makes sense to me.
And maybe maybe there's an image of that and I just didn't notice it.
No, I mean, we've drawn it up. We haven't done like a rendering of it, which we can do. We could render it with and I guess we're maybe to clarify, when we say we want to replace with all new, we want to pick like the same series of window, right, so that they've got the same kind of proportions of the sills and everything like that. But there is a variance in, like I said, on the proportion, or which are double hung or single hung, or if they've got a middle mullion, we can have
Sure.
the middle mullions to match what's there.
Sure.
If we need to, and render that out. I guess part of it is just we feel like the windows are to repair them. We're basically replacing almost all of the parts. Most of them are beyond being able to sand down and refurbish, right? There's no integrity left in the window, and so that's why it's like if we have one window that we repair, it's good, and then we replace some of the others that are old and beyond repair. Will that look less consistent now to have,
Sure.
Will that add to the eclecticness of the back, this courtyard that we're trying to clean up, we're trying to bring some cohesiveness to it. That's a little bit of that concern, and we could render it. I mean, we could provide, a more detailed. We've got a submittal now from the contractors. We've been trying to get different pricing and proposals of what we can do. We'd be happy to do that. We are told that it's like a 6-month lead time right now to get the windows, and so if we, part of it is if we can get some level of comfort or understanding with the commission on at least proceeding down a direction, and then we can work on the detailing of those windows and maybe the articulation of it. We can finesse that. I think that would allow us to also still be able to keep our place in the queue on getting these ordered and fabricated, so we can still get them in this year.
Sure. Yeah, I get
we're already trying to project, and can we get this done before we have winter conditions again next year, or the end of this year. That would help us be able to at least keep that process moving, and then we could come back to the commission with more details of like, this is exactly what this window will look like, and how this replacement would look, and I told Dustin, if we can, and from the owner, like if we can actually repair the window, make it look good, and have it functional and reasonably affordable, we're all for it. Because our end goal, I think, is the same as yours. We want this to look beautiful. We want it to look vibrant, and we want activity and energy, in this part of town, and to celebrate these historic buildings. And Matt, I totally agree with what you said. I'm glad you said that, because I feel like I've had this conversation with preservationists where, what we don't want to do is try to pretend that we're recreating history, and make something look like it's faux historic. Because I think, personally, I feel like that is a detraction. It's less respectful to the actual historic buildings, because they have far more character. We don't build it the same way anymore.
Right.
And so that's exactly our goal, is to do things that are complementary, that do not overshadow, do not overcompete with the historic bones, but that fit in nicely and cleanly, in an elegant way.
That's awesome. Thank you. Dustin, what, how much of a difference do you think the windows would be if they took it on a building by building basis? Do you see a substantial difference in your mind of what they would look like? Or are you hoping to have a drill down of what windows can actually be preserved versus which ones need to be replaced?
Yeah, so I tried to kind of put up images of different windows here to kind of help, I think, answer that type of a question that I thought would come up. So currently on all these different buildings, each building has different windows, right? So as you can see, there's ones with, an arch over the top. There's ones with those sandstone seals versus a wood seal versus, this one's not, this is a newer addition, but concrete, there's all different types on these buildings, and some are obviously not in the scope, and just a separate topic, but the ones that are, they're clearly different type of windows, wood windows, but like I said, there's different types of materials used on those windows. And so to take them all out and replace them with all a new window that kind of fits, I don't think would be appropriate, because we're dealing with different buildings built at different times, and we're looking at the back of the building. Imagine if we went and did that on the front of all these buildings, how much that would change the original integrity of that. So that's why I felt like looking at each building and saying, okay, for example, on this one here, we looked at the example, this window doesn't fit, but these need repairs. Some down here need more repairs than others, just because maybe sprinklers and lack of maintenance over years. So some of them, the window seals are pretty rotted, and those window seals could be replaced, and maybe some other portions of the window could be repaired. But on the rest of the window, it just needs some some new paint and possibly some filler and things like that. So there's a preservation brief that the Department of the Interior has created specifically for, it's called Preservation Briefs, the repair of historic wooden windows. And I sent a copy of that to the applicant, but I think there's a lot of good information in there that helps answer a lot of these questions that we have as far as, so it talks about respecting the significance of the original materials and features, repairing and retaining them whenever possible, and when necessary, replacing them in kind. So when you're replacing them, if you're replacing a historic window that we know exactly what it looks like, it's appropriate at that time to refabricate one that would take its place if it's beyond repair. And we're not doing where if you were putting in a one next to it, say this addition, say we took out all of these windows, we wouldn't necessarily try to match it with one from this building that was original. I think that's what Mr. Christensen was describing as far as mimicking old historic things. But if we have the historic window and it's just beyond repair and it needs to be replaced, it could be replaced with or should be replaced with one that matches what originally was there.
So that's the reason why I was asking the questions. Those windows where you're right there look like they're historic, but how do we know when that addition was put on?
Yeah, and that's what I think we need more information and
because if they're not within the historic time period and they were made to look historic, then
and they might not. Some of them might not be part of when the original building was built, but we also know, in the standards for rehabilitation,
becomes historic.
It talks about as things develop over time, they become part of the historic fabric. So while it might not be part of the original, there are additions that still kind of end up fitting in that historic fabric of that building.
So I had never been back there. And I went back there, and I can see why they might make them look more similar, because it just looks really messy back there. You don't really know that it's all the same building.
Yeah.
That would be one reason I would argue it might be helpful to have them look alike, so that you know that it's all the same building.
Yeah, but if you did that on the front of the buildings, I think that's a good way to say.
Yeah, to be fair, the front of the buildings are the historic facade, and like that portion we're talking about, based on our drawings, looks like it was built in 1979, right? And the windows, if we have our submission of what we've sent in, we provided a bunch of photographs of those windows. And if you want to pull those up, there's sheet A303. If there's someone that can repair those windows affordably and keep them keep the integrity of those windows, we would love it. But they're rough. They're really, really bad. And so our intent is not because we want to cut corners on this, but it's, I guess the question for me is, what is the cutoff for what is historic? And because like I was saying earlier, the proportions of those windows on that back piece we were just talking about, they're larger windows. They'll be bigger windows. And so they will look different than the windows in the other buildings. I think just the proportion of it alone and the size of those windows will help with that. But I guess that's a tough thing. I totally understand on the university and the Center Street side where we have original facade and original windows, or windows that maybe sometimes are not as original, but on the back of these buildings, we're really looking at a landscape of cobbled different facades and walls that I don't believe much of what we see, if any, of what we see from that courtyard is original to anything that's from turn of the century. And I don't know what the ruling is, from the landmarks of what fits the definition of historic or not, as far as what needs to be preserved. But we documented that in the drawings we submitted, based on drawings we have from 1979, when those windows were, like on that portion there, when they were originally installed, and they were wood, they were not a clad window, and they deteriorated pretty badly.
So I'm just looking at the images in the staff report. Well, Commissioner, what should we do? What's next for us?
Matt, here's I'm concerned here. I might get pulled out of this meeting in about 10 minutes. So here's my concern is typically I'm very much in favor of retaining historic features on buildings. So repair rather than replace. But I also worry sometimes that we create fetishes out of certain details that work against the continuing use of historic properties. This is neither a museum nor Monticello or Mount Vernon. This is a commercial structure that we want to retain vibrant to the city of Utah, or to the city of Provo, sorry. And we've got these back windows of differing shapes and sizes and years. What's important to me is to maintain the structural work, the brickwork around the windows.
Yeah.
It's important to me that we don't just slap in some stock vinyl windows in here. I guess I am less, and this is odd for me to say, I'm less passionate about making sure that we retain a window from maybe 40 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, that's in definite need of replacement than I would be on some other structures. This is a commercial property that's got to be functioning going forward. So I'm sympathetic to the applicant in that sense, given that the use of this structure. So I want to maintain the shadow lines in the windows. I want to maintain all that's good about the architecture of this without fetishizing it.
So if I can just say, I agree with that sentiment, and I think that when it's not an actual historic window that we know is historic, I think that the fact that you want to use Pella, which is a beautiful brand, could make it beautiful back there. So I agree.
Yeah, I also would come down on the side of replacement versus repair when they're in terrible shape, as they are in many instances of looking at these photographs.
And they're even worse if you look at them in person.
Yeah, they do. Every time I go to Rockwell, I park back there and it's rough. All right, so what's next for us, everybody? I think I concur with Jeff's sentiments as well. So with that in mind, what do we want to do?
Well, you had suggested renderings that might help us visualize just a little better what the applicant desires to do here.
Yeah, I'd love to see a rendering just so we know what it's going to look like. Jeff and Dan and the quiet guy be next to you. What are your thoughts on where we're at this point? I got to say, I'm thrilled that you're being proactive and coming to us before anything happens. This doesn't always happen. So this is terrific.
Well, we definitely want to work with the support of the commission, and like I said, this is one piece of a longer story that we want to continue to develop back here, and for the property in general. And again, the big idea here is to celebrate this cool property, and that's why I want to be back here. That's why I like being here before. It's a special place, and so. Yeah, I mean, we can provide, more renderings. We can provide more details of what those windows would look like. I guess one little question that might help on our end is, if there's as part of the replacement, if we go that direction, we would prefer to replace with a wood clad window so to protect the window rather than just the straight wood, just for better maintenance in the long run. We want to make sure if we replace with a clad window, if that's agreeable to the commission, and then what we would like to do is maybe take that next step then, and we can develop, maybe a little bit more details about what the windows are, but then start, like I said, on our end, we can at least try to keep things moving on getting these procured. And I know that we'll still have to submit a building permit and go through that process for approval and everything, but we're just trying to project down the road, what we can do to get things looking good back there as soon as we can on our end. So, I wish that we could meet again sooner than the next month to discuss some of that detail. So I don't know if there's any way to submit something that then just gets reviewed as a commission or something later, or if we have to just come back to next month's meeting. But that's the only thing for us from a timeline standpoint. We're just so far down the road on lead times to get things
Sure.
ordered, but.
Sorry, I cut you off. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, so Dustin, maybe I kind of heard two questions or two things we need to address in that comment then from Jeff is one with the wood clad, the material. Is there an issue there? And then I believe we just have to make a public notice to have a meeting. And I don't think there's anything that says we can't meet sooner. We just have to have a notice that says we're a public notice saying that we're meeting. Could you help us navigate those two questions? I mean, I'm sympathetic to this taking longer than it needs to. It'd be nice if it didn't have to.
So the first question is about the wood clad type of window. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it'd be helpful to see that and see what it would look like you said, see a rendering. If that's the direction the commission's leaning to replace all the windows with that one type of window, then yeah, I guess we'd have to see it. I don't have a opinion on it at this point. Then, if that's the path forward, I think more information.
The profiles would be the same if it was wood or wood clad. It'd be more just if we can clad it, for the longer term maintenance. But we would either way it would have the same. We would still pick the same or propose the same profile on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and what about the meeting question, Dustin?
So you want to hold another landmarks meeting prior to the next scheduled meeting?
Yeah, because we love getting together.
Yeah, I would have to look into that, see what the feasibility is for that.
Okay, because I know that we've done other stuff. We've done tours and things like that, and we've had to make them meetings. We have to put a public notice up saying that we're going to be meeting.
So timing wise, I mean, if they submitted something today, we'd want to have time to look at it. And then by the time, like you just mentioned about getting noticing out, we would be about the next month's meeting, so doing something quicker, we'd have to have something immediately and then spend a short amount of time reviewing it and then get it noticed right away. So
Jeff, why don't we do this then? Dustin, just look into see what the feasibility of realistically, how soon could we hold another meeting? Jeff, if it's realistically not until next month, are you guys going to be able to live with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll make it work. I mean, what I would, I guess, then also say is, look through. I know we didn't render out each material, or each window necessarily, but we do have some of that information in that packet. But it sounds like, I mean, I think what we can do is work with the contractor and work with our the window provider. What we can do is try to buy some time with them, keep our position in their queue. When we have a 6-month lead time, that they're not going to start building these or fabricating these for a while. So we'll try to maintain our position in that line, and then see what we can do to illustrate the windows. Are we talking that if we did a mock-up rendering of each window, is that helpful, or do you want to have a rendering of that whole back facade with all of the windows replaced? I mean, what would be, I guess, what would be helpful, or what helps you to be able to see this and be able to make a determination?
Sure. That's a great question. I guess for me, I'd like to see just in the totality what it would look like. If I'm standing in the courtyard, what it looks like as I'm standing there. But to see, I guess, some of the window. I don't know if we need to see every single window, unless the other commissioners want to see every single window. But I think getting a sense of what the whole thing looks like, as well as some of the details. I mean, seeing what some of them look like is going to be obviously helpful. So I guess yes, but not. I don't think we need to have every. I don't know how many windows there are. We don't need to have every single window rendered in detail, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does everybody else? Is that?
Yeah.
No, I think we just need to see what a standard window might look like. Of course, it'll be different sizes because they're different size windows.
Right.
How many
Yeah.
types of windows, how many different variations of windows are you guys putting together? Because with the different buildings, I don't think there's so many different variations. So I would like to see not each individual window, but there's
Each variation.
Yeah, each variation, if that's possible, with also the rendering of the outside.
Yeah, there's 20 different types. We have and I don't know if what you guys got have like all of these drawings, photographs, plans. If that's all information that you guys received, but we have all of the different windows, elevated next to their like photographs. And then in the packet, there's a sheet in the back that basically shows like kind of what that.
Yeah, we have that one. Or maybe it was the one that you showed us that doesn't. Oh yeah, we've got it.
Yeah.
It's page 23 in the staff report, everybody, in case you're curious.
And actually, one thing I wanted to bring up too, like you were talking before, Dustin, with the arches, like the arches, the brickwork, all of that would stay the same around the windows. Obviously, we wouldn't be touching any of that. What we would be putting these windows, because none of the actual windows actually have an arch on the glass pane itself.
Right.
So we'd just be fitting this into that same opening. For exactly that reason, we don't want to mess with the brick and the masonry around it, as much as possible. Some of those sills, especially the sandstone ones, are really rough. So we would just need to fix some of those where needed. But so that's kind of where we went through, and we didn't render it in 3 dimensions and color and material on it, but we kind of drew each elevation like this is the window, and then this is how we basically plug in. So the trim, the detailing, we're going to try to keep the way it is as much as possible, and then just have the actual window portion itself is what gets replaced. So are we talking like a lot more detail than we have in those drawings and just having maybe something more rendered, or do you feel like
I guess seeing them rendered in place is what we're looking for.
Okay.
So, because I can see what like on that last page of the staff report, that last sheet that you showed us that you have on the desk there, is that the window that you're thinking is what would be put into all of the windows? That one that are silent? Okay.
Correct. That's the window profile, right, for the frame and everything, and then.
Yeah, that one. Sorry.
So that one over there on the right is the Conia. That's if it was just all aluminum. The Pella is the one that would be the aluminum clad. The clad, it's got the wood on the inside, and then they just have the aluminum cladding to protect the wood on the exterior side of the window. So it's hand over on the left of that little image right there. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the profile, like I said, the profile of the frame and everything is the same, whether it's clad or the exposed wood. We prefer the clad for the durability of it, but it would have the same profile.
Okay. It looks like, is there a public comment?
Yeah, we need to open it up for a public comment.
There are no public comments at this time. 30 seconds.
Dustin, having lost, looks like Jasa had to bail and Jeff had to leave. With just Susan and I don't know that we can actually make any votes now. Is that accurate?
You have Jesse here as well. So.
Oh, Jesse, because she's off camera. I'm not used to you being there, Jesse. I'm sorry.
I've been talking.
Well, and I should have known better. You're right.
No public comments.
Out of sight, out of mind is my problem. Thank you. Okay. So commissioners, what do we want to do?
I would recommend that if we can possibly get together in 2 weeks, that we do so to try and resolve this. If everything would be ready for us to look at before that.
I think there's a lot more things that they gave us that we haven't been considering.
What do you mean?
Those pictures that they showed were they're just talking about the glass part of the windows. So I'm not sure that I have a good sense of what they're doing. That's just what I thought.
You said you have a good sense of what they're doing?
Yeah.
So you feel like with the information that we have, we could actually make a decision?
Yes.
Okay.
But I may be the lone wolf.
No. I'm just making sure I understand where you're going. Susan, what about you?
Well, I must confess, in all of the things that were attached, until we're meeting now, I didn't understand what I was looking at.
Yeah,
There
I
was
didn't either.
so much information there. And so I'm just beginning to get a feel for it. I like the idea of what the applicant is proposing in terms of the wood-clad windows and the variations in sizes. You're retaining the historic look, the eyebrow, things like that. In that sense, I'm quite comfortable with what they're proposing, and I'm comfortable with the idea of replacement versus repair at this point. So maybe Jesse's right. Maybe we could make a decision. I guess I think we know what Jeff's feelings were about it. Are you on mute?
Then I agreed with what Jeff had said, so.
Mm-hmm. Are you on mute?
I am on mute. And that makes sense why no one's responding to me. I'm like, if you guys don't want to talk, I guess that's. Does anyone want to make a motion? So, are we ready? Are we ready for a motion then, or do we want to kick this around some more? You can all hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
that the applicant proceed as they're planning. If they have questions about what's going to happen, that any question they come back and talk to us rather than do something that we have to have undone as we did in the previous case.
mm-hmm.
I know not a formal motion, but that's my view.
Okay. I don't think I can make a motion.
Well, we don't have anybody that normally makes the motions here that's left, but I'll try.
Okay.
I move that we move forward with the proposal from the applicant to replace the windows with wood-clad windows of varying sizes based upon the openings that are there. And that we, I think that's the motion, basically. Unless somebody would like to add to that.
You want to add anything to that motion then with what you were saying, Jesse, or is that?
I guess I would just add that if there are problems, that they consult with us to see if what they need to do, we can have a chance to comment on.
Okay. Jeff, if we were to make that motion formal and seconded and voted, is that something that is livable for you guys?
Yeah, that would be very helpful. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and maybe just to clarify, if we run into problems or whatever, I guess maybe clarification what that means. I mean, is that obviously if we have to change course, then we would, or have a variation, whatever, we would bring it forth to the commission. That's basically the intent of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exactly how we want to do it.
Okay. So, Susan, that motion you made then that we grant certificate of appropriateness based on the conversation with wood-clad enclosures and varying sizes, with the understanding that if they have to make variances, they consult with us.
Yes.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Does anyone second that?
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Okay, Dustin, thank you for your good work. Sorry we ignored your staff recommendation. First time for everything. Don't take that too personal. Just slightly personal, maybe. Anyway, so Jeff and Dan, we obviously trust you and hope that that trust won't be misplaced.
No, we appreciate the trust from your side as well. And like I said, I'm sure we will be meeting again about other efforts, you know, that we're involved with here to help this place have a lot more energy and life again.
If you can just get that parking garage underground, that'd be terrific too.
Hey, you know, they at least they did paint, they you know, a fresh coat of paint made at least a big difference on it. But
Good.
but yeah, no, there's some exciting things I think coming, and so appreciate being able to work with you guys on these.
Thank you.
Something other than the thrift store right there on Center and University.
What was that?
Something other than that thrift store that's right there where Los Hermanos used to be. That seems like we have on your main streets.
No, there's interest from a lot of different people right now in that corner space. So hopefully something will get locked in here soon.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. I think that concludes this part of the agenda. So if you guys want to sign off, you're welcome to. If you want to hang out and watch, some more exciting things are about to happen, but it's up to you.
We will move on to our next set of meetings. So thank you.
Thank you. Dustin, we need to, I know it wasn't on the agenda, but we need to firm up when we're going to have, where we're going to have our tour for the historic home tour this summer. The Freedom Festival, we've already had one meeting. We met last week, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. Can we put that on the agenda for the March meeting? Because we need to not only pick a place, but pick a neighborhood, but we need to start deciding if we're going to ask homes to let us in, or if because of COVID, we're going to not do that. If, you know, we need to decide how we're going to handle this year's historic home tours.
Okay, yeah, I'll add that for March.
Thank you.
There's a discussion, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Susan, do you have anything?
No, in fact, that was the very issue it had occurred to me that we hadn't really talked about, and it's getting really late in the year
to start
determine
asking people.
the neighborhood and to get homes, and I'm really concerned still about COVID.
Yeah, I am too.
People inviting into their homes, crowds. I mean, I've been having to stay home and not do as much, and so that worries me quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I understand. Jesse, do you have anything else?
I've just been curious, have we heard anything about what's happening at the startup building, or they just decide not to do anything?
Yeah, right now they're trying to figure out the parking situation.
Because we had that Jenna called the doorway.
Yeah, right now there's not good access to parking and enough parking to work that out. So right now they're kind of working with the neighboring properties and trying to figure that out. So.
And are there any other projects that we've heard that we sort of delayed? Have any of them moved on at all?
Yeah, some of the one on Center Street with the 3rd edition, that's under construction right now. And Amanda Knight Hall's open, and
Okay.
so those are.
I was wondering, I can't remember what it was. So
yeah, Matt on the tour.
Yeah.
Last year's, and maybe we can talk about this next month, unless I was just wondering how last year, how we did the, put together that,
The walking tour brochure.
yeah, did that work? If that's what we need to do this year, is that?
Yeah, I think it worked well for last year. I don't know how many people actually went and did it, but I think the fact that we're putting something out there, that's, I mean, obviously the best we can do, and I thought it looked great.
Okay, so yeah, if needs be, we can talk about it more next month, but if needs be, we can maybe do a different section kind of the same way.
Pick a
Right.
neighborhood, yeah.
I did, there is a request from the, that church on University and 200. I can't remember what the one that's doing all the renovation.
Community church.
Yeah. They've actually asked to be on the tour this year or to be a sponsor of the tour in some way. So there's something to think about there too. So.
Okay.
Were we working that, this historical booklet? We worked on working the history and what houses were gonna be listed there. Where's that project at?
It's on hold. Yeah.
Okay.
It was, we got going on it, and there was quite a bit to do on my end, and I had the our graphic designer was wanting to put in a lot of effort, time on that, and he's not here anymore. So it's still something I want us to do, but yeah, I've just had a lot of other stuff and I've been able to dedicate the time to it, but it is on my list, and
it's just when the GIS person came to the meeting I went to, say how they call it,
Provology.
They asked if there was something about historic districts. Unfortunately, I was there and could say, there is the Landmarks Commission and we do have this online, but GIS guys seem to have no idea what was on it.
Okay.
Cool. Maybe we can bring it up as a discussion item as well for the next meeting, Dustin, because I'm guessing we can lend a hand in that area. I know I certainly can. I mean, I'm not a graphic designer, but I certainly know my way around InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop. So
yeah, and I think that part was one portion of the other was just trying to coordinate it all and
decide what other houses we might want to
pick
add.
the homes and all that.
We've all kind of done an exercise going out and looking at some, and so
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of discuss it, and maybe we can all get up to speed on where we're at and see what we need to do next. So, okay, anything else, anybody? All right, I hereby adjourn this meeting.
Adios.
Have a great week, everybody. Or month, I guess I should say.